Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Dreamshell in the 15-minute pool on ICC. Let's play G6. I've had a hankering for the G6 move on move 1 lately, so we're playing a modern. And I'm going to play it in a slightly different fashion. I've been reading this book, Tiger's Modern, by Quality Chess, is the publisher, and recommends some rather interesting lines for black, involving a setup with D6 and A6, which is how most legit modern players play this opening. Before on my channel, you've seen a lot of C6 followed by D5 in conjunction with the fianchetto, but I'm playing it a little bit differently now, just to experiment, keep my game fresh. So Dreamshell puts the bishop on C4. I think I'll play A6 against that. I might even opt for a hippo setup with E6 and knight E7 to come. So what I'm doing is kind of laying back and avoiding a direct clash in the center for now. A4 is played to stop B5. However, I know that the author of Tiger's Modern does not like this move so much and doesn't consider it to be a critical try in a lot of scenarios. That's Tiger Hillart Pearson, is the grandmaster and author. So I'm thinking about playing B6 and then putting the bishop on B7. F7 is under attack, so we have to bear that in mind. I can also play knight F6 first if I want to just attack that pawn on E4. Then we'd be kind of looking at more of a Pirc type setup. Maybe I can play that right away. Knight F6 and assume knight C3, play B6 then. I just know you sometimes don't want to linger with the B6 move because they might play A5. Yeah, let's play knight F6 first. I think this is sensible. And there's definitely some transpositional possibilities to the Pirc. When you commit the knight to F6, you're kind of in Pirc territory in conjunction with the fianchettoed bishop. Dreamshell is a player I recognize. I've played this player before, I'm almost positive, in the 15-minute category. Just looking up their stats. Peak 15-minute rating of 2108. Yeah, and they do play knight C3. So B6, or do I castle? Decisions. Let's castle. Yeah, let's do this first. I'm expecting them to castle. And do I want to play that B6 move, or should I play more so in the center? Because it is kind of tempting to go bishop G4 and pin them. Another idea here is knight takes E4, and after knight takes E4, then play D5. Little center fork trick. It's probably not a bad idea for black. But bishop G4 looks straightforward. Let's say bishop G4, H3, bishop takes F3, queen takes F3, maybe knight C6 then. Attacking that pawn on D4. Looks straightforward. The only thing I'm wondering about is if I play B6, looking to put the bishop on B7, I wonder if I can get a quick E5 in. That's the move that I'm not certain about. B6, E5. Taking the bull by the horns and advancing in the center. Whereas if I play bishop G4, I think they're a little less likely to do that because they're in a pin. Yeah, I think bishop G4 looks reasonable, so let's play it. And this knight will probably come to C6. I know one aspect of white having played A4 already is that if I play knight C6, I can sometimes utilize the B4 square. I can try to put the knight in there, especially if it's attacked with D5, and it might find a nice home. Okay, so H3, we're certainly going to take it. And I think just knight C6 now, attack that pawn on D4. Possibly looking to follow with E5 very shortly. And strike back in the center. Like, say, for instance, bishop E3, I'll be very tempted to play E5. Attacking that pawn once more. And then if, say, bishop E3, E5, D5, the center will become closed, and I can choose where to put my knight. Knight D4 actually might not be bad there. But I could also go to E7 and try to play the position like a King's Indian. Maybe move this knight and later play for F5. It's cool in chess to start studying and discovering openings that previously you had ignored up till that point in your chess development. And I've always felt like positive results in my chess game have been correlated with studying new lines. So making a push to take yourself outside your comfort zone in the opening and start looking at lines that maybe are not quite your style, or lines that you know to be good but just haven't investigated, and just try to explore them. Study them a bit. You don't even necessarily have to play them in serious games. That can sometimes be a long process, but just the process of studying a new line and trying to assimilate some of the ideas is helpful for your development. It gives you a new perspective on things. It just seems to me that the best players in the world are constantly challenging themselves. They're not standing still with their knowledge. They're looking to push the envelope and evolve. So I don't know the ins and outs of this opening. I mean, I have a very rudimentary understanding of this modern with, D6 and A6. But I know some ideas. I've looked at some games, and I'm currently working through that book a bit. And for me, that's enough. I can play it, and certainly in an online game where there's nothing at stake, you can feel free to explore and not worry about the result so much. And I think that's a good overall piece of advice for most everyone watching these videos. Don't feel like you have to know everything about an opening before you start playing it. That's a very tedious thing to think about, trying to understand every single variation and sub-variation and all the underlying ideas before playing an opening. If you do that, you're never going to get around to playing an opening you want to play. You just have to start playing it, study a little bit of theory before you do so, but don't go crazy. You can even play an opening with no knowledge of theory. You'll have a completely blank slate to work with, but it'll be interesting for you nonetheless. But definitely don't feel like you have to know every single little thing about the line before you play it. All right, so I was thinking about playing e5 against this move to strike back in the center because white has the bishop pair and a pawn duo on e4, d4. I don't want to let that stick around for too long. I think I'd rather push e5 and look to break that up. The only other move that attacks the center is knight d7. But I sort of feel like knight d7 is just a similar move to e5. They could even transpose, like knight d7, maybe rook a d1, and then e5. I'd be looking at playing. So I'm leaning towards e5 right away. Yeah, let's play it that way. We're attacking d4 twice. I would bet that they'll either take or push. I don't get the sense that they're going to reinforce this with knight e2. Knight e2 looks a little awkward to me. It may not be that bad of a move, but something about it just screams out awkward. Actually, knight e2, e takes d4, and then if knight takes d4, I have knight e5, forking the queen and the bishop. And then if queen e2, maybe knight takes e4. I can try to win a pawn. Maybe they have bishop d5 then, I don't know. They could take. D takes e5, knight takes e5, queen e2, and just defend that bishop. I think I get some nice play after rook e8, let's say. But it wouldn't be out of the question to play like that. Or maybe take first on c4 and then play rook e8. If d5, like I said, I have choices. I can go knight d4 if I want to be aggressive. Knight e7 would be my default move in the style of a King's Indian. But d5, knight d4, bishop takes d4, e takes d4, knight e2. Let's say knight d7 then. Let's say rook a d1, perhaps. Maybe I have trouble with that pawn. Knight e5, queen b3, defending the bishop. Yeah, that pawn's a little awkward to defend. So they do play d5, closing the center. And I was thinking knight e7. Yeah, knight d4, bishop takes d4, pawn takes d4. My dark square bishop might gain some scope, but otherwise I'm not thrilled about that line. If knight e7 is bishop g5 a concern, I guess I can just play knight d7 in that case, getting out of the attack. Let me just look at knight d4 one more time. Knight d4, bishop takes d4, e takes d4, knight e2. There's also like rook e8 in that position. Rook e8 counterattacking the e pawn. That might not be so bad. Knight d4 is certainly more active. What if they could just move the queen? Knight d4, queen d1. And then say knight d7. I'd look to be supporting the knight soon with a move like c5. All right, I'm going to risk it. I think knight e7 was safe and fine, but it's possible that this could lead to an open diagonal for my dark square bishop. And I don't see immediately how white's going to win that pawn back. So I think the double d pawns could be a bother for white. And if they take, I'm going to gain an attack on e4. So that's my thinking behind that move. Queen d1 might be critical. I don't know that white should take on d4. Yeah, queen d1. He must have came to the same conclusion. So now knight e7. And he might just play knight e7, then knight e2, and look to swap. That would be understandable. Ooh, do I have to worry about... I wonder if I have to worry about like knight d7, knight b1, looking to play b3. That I did not think about. Well, I could play a move like rook e8 right now. Idea of that is if they take on d4 twice, again, e4 falls. So I could try to use some indirect tactics to defend that knight. And then maybe I have time to play c5 and try to rescue it. It's kind of weird, but maybe. Okay, let's try it. Rook e8. I think I underestimated queen d1 a little bit. Like, it didn't occur to me that white might actually move this knight to a square other than e2. Because if they play knight b1, I mean, they are threatening c3, and my knight has no safe squares to retreat. The problem for them now is that e4 would hang if they did that. So can I get some counterplay going before this knight becomes ensnared? I would think so. I mean, I'm ready to play c6 if I want to try to counterattack the center. Again, I'm not blundering a pawn right now because bishop takes d4, e takes d4, queen takes d4, runs into knight takes e4 with a discovery on the queen. I don't think white wants to allow that line. Maybe bishop d3 to overprotect e4 and try to prepare a knight move away. Bishop d3, and if something like knight d7, knight b1. Yeah, that knight's running out of squares. Maybe on bishop d3, I'd have to play c5 or c6 right away. Probably c6. Try to strike at that d5 pawn. Because if I can get rid of the d5 pawn, then my knight will have at least one square to jump back to, c6 or e6. This is kind of an annoying move for white, so part of my hope with that move is that they would take some time as well, which the currently is. f4 is possible too. Because I can't take on f4 due to the hanging knight. I need that pawn on e5 supporting it. So maybe they can play f4, f5. Start trying to attack me on the king side. I do think if I knew that this scenario would play out, I would have played knight e7 instead of knight d4 a couple moves ago. He's taking some serious time, though. 6:30 now. Mr. Dreamshell from Canada. So how will I respond to f4? I can use my time to think about that right now. I could play c6 maybe, like I was intending. I could try to move my knight, like maybe f4, knight h5, attacking that pawn on f4. They could push f5 then, perhaps. I'm not sure I like all that space White's gaining. If f4, I'm kind of leaning towards playing c6. Try to knock out their center. f3. Well, that's one way to prepare this knight to move. It doesn't threaten bishop takes d4, but it does prepare that knight to move. Still, I think c6 will be a good answer. Yeah, I'm going to play it quick, too, because not much has really changed. And f3 was kind of a meek move. So if I can capitalize on my time advantage and play a move that I know fits in with my plan, too, trying to take out that d5 pawn, then all the better. White's issue with this pawn is that they can't really leave it on d5, because if I take and they try to replace it with the other pawn, then I gain the f5 square for my knight. So that's quite nice. Queen d2. Huh. So now I'm even looking at stuff with b5. I suspect their idea is that if pawn takes, they're going to take with the knight. So two ideas come to mind. Rook c8, or maybe b5. If rook c8, they can take on c6, and to be consistent, I would have to take with the rook, attacking that bishop. And I'm not sure after bishop a2 if they dislike that position at all, because they have some pretty nice activity there. I think b5 is the way to go. b5, a takes b5, a takes b5. Let's say rook takes a8, queen takes a8. I mean, I can continue with b4 and possibly take on d5 next. So I think I like the look of that. Yeah, let's go for b5. Maximum pawn play. So striking at d5 and a4 now and trying to disturb the status quo. Because this move will help us play b4, which in turn will destabilize d5 if all goes according to plan. White's going to have to think about where to put that bishop very soon. If a takes b5, I'm definitely taking with my a pawn. Okay, so they just drop the bishop back. So b4 would be consistent. Yeah, I think b4 is a good idea. b4, knight e2. I can even play c5 then. Or trade and then take on d5 also. All right, let's do it. There's knight d1 if they want to avoid a knight trade, but then I'm taking on d5 and trying to blow up their center. Maybe one line that would be interesting would be knight d1. I was even thinking b3 here, trying to double up their b pawns. Would that be too crazy? I guess b3, they could even take on d4, though. They don't have to take on b3. So c takes d5, c3. Maybe b3? C takes d4, b takes a2. I like the way that's looking for me in the center. Yeah, let's do that. So if c3, I'll play b3. All right, they just recapture. But that leaves d5 awfully weak. This looks like fun now. I have some ideas, especially in regards to b3. It's the move that I want to play right now. b3. Bishop takes b3, knight takes b3, pawn takes b3. Maybe queen b8 then? Huh. I don't know if I have to go to those lengths, though. There's also knight f5, which is interesting. Knight f5 just attacking that dark square bishop. Maybe I can plow through in the center. Knight f5, bishop f2, bishop h6. b4 is hanging in that case, though. Tough call. I've got a lot of tempting options. b3 was the move I wanted to play, but I'm not sure what to do after bishop takes b3. Knight takes, pawn takes. That only seems to help white. I wonder if knight f5 if they can actually play queen takes b4. That's awfully risky, though. All right. We're going to play for the initiative. I'll invite them to take here if they want. And then I'm thinking rook b8 if they do take that pawn. And attack down the b file. e3 is loose too. And also I have this idea of pushing e4. Like I kind of want to push e4 right now. I think I would be tactically justified in doing that. e4, if queen takes b4, there's e3, followed by e2. Forking the rook and the knight. Is e4, g4 a problem? It might be. e4, g4. This knight doesn't have a lot of good options. Maybe I should play bishop h6 and try to keep this going. Okay, yeah, let's do that. Bishop h6, attack the queen. Both getting a little low on time. So if queen takes b6, e4 is the plan. And then if g4, maybe I can keep going with e3. Now that the queen is no longer assisting. So I'm sacking a pawn. But my hope is that my kingside pieces are going to cause some ruckus here. And especially my e-pawn too. If he takes the e-pawn, I have a nice choice between rook takes or, more probably, knight takes e4. I think that opens up a bevy of options. We're attacking f2, and our queen can maybe come to g5. This bishop on a2 is way out of play, I believe. All right, queen d7. Yeah, probably queen d7. Queen e7, I might walk into a pin, so I think this is the better square. So I'm just playing off white's poor coordination at the moment. I know it's going to be essentially a blitz game now, but I feel like I have better chances for the coming time scramble. It's always easier to attack and possess the initiative than it is to defend in a time scramble. I shouldn't say always, most of the time. Knight c3, okay. So if I take, rook takes is coming. I can push. I can also play a move like rook b8, but they'll play a5 if I do that. Knight g3 is an option. Knight g3, rook f2, there's e3. Let's go knight g3. I think that's a good move. Because I want to try to get this rook, yeah, exactly a move like that, because now I have take. And if he takes back, queen takes h3 is coming. This looks bad for white. There's queen h4, which would attack my knight on g3 and the bishop on g6. Ooh, and also this knight. But I do have like knight h5 if I need it. Yeah, he has that move. There's knight e2 as well. Knight e2. Knight e2, rook takes, pawn takes. And I'm threatening some nasty stuff. Yeah, I think knight e2 is good.
Check.
Hard to say. We're both pretty low on time at this point, but I'm going to go with this one. So the idea is, oh, did I just miss that he could do that? I completely missed that that knight was protecting that square. Whoops. That was really bad. Okay, now I'm going to have to hope for some sort of time scramble miracle. Well, what do you know? When it's all supposedly going your way, then this can happen. F2 doesn't do anything. That was a complete blunder on my part. All right, how do I make this sloppy now? It's going to be tough. All right, let's go here. It's going to be a bullet game now. Well, even I can mess up in these 15-minute games, guys. I know it was going very well for me historically, but as you can see, I'm not prone to blunders. Or not prone to... I am prone to blunders, I should say. Boy, completely blanked on that knight on c3. I thought he had to take with a rook or move his king. Tunnel vision. I should have just put something on h5. That would have been by far the better option. Okay, so they're trying to get at my bishop, I guess. All right, I guess I'll take. And then I'll take here. Try to get something on the king side going. I mean, their bishop is still way out of play over here on a2, but... yeah, they're trying to reintroduce it to the game. Let's come here, attack c2. I'm leaving d6 undefended, but... desperate times, you know? Bishop d3, queen takes d5. Like it's something, I guess. Queen takes g2 then, looks pretty good.
Check.
He's going to trade rooks. Takes. I would not play it like this if I were him. Take here, maybe queen takes b2 could be played. That's still winning, but... Just come here and attack that bishop. Yeah, it brings the bishop to a safe square. Let's attack that bishop again.
Time
F2.
warning.
Yeah. Let's play f5. Total time scramble now. Bishop e3 is a threat. He overlooked it.
check, 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 check,
Oof. Wow. Okay, complete time scramble at the end. What can you do? I mean, see, this is kind of different than a situation where someone might be obliged to offer a draw because, well, first of all, he was totally winning and then I was totally winning. And in this last 10 seconds, if someone takes the time to offer a draw, you're probably losing on time. So, yeah, definitely not the cleanest win that I've played, but hopefully it was instructive nonetheless. Completely blanked on knight takes e2. I don't know why. Maybe the mysterious backward knight moves? Just completely unnecessary move. I should have played knight h5, I'm pretty sure. One of the knights to h5. It might not be as clear as I thought, though. Let's go back and have a look. So playing this Pirc modern, Pirc modern, and then a6. Yeah, generally I think this inclusion, a6, a4, should benefit black slightly. Because as I said, black gains the use of the b4 square. That's one nice virtue of this interchange. That said, I mean, the position's completely playable for white. So this occurred, and then bishop g4. I have a feeling there's a couple acceptable ways to play it. You know, I was debating that b6 move, whether I wanted to go for that, but I didn't like b6, e5, just directly attacking me in the center. I mean, I think that's one thing black has to be concerned about. So all in all, bishop g4 seems fine. The computer likes white because it definitely prefers that space advantage that white has with the pawns, but if you play this line, I expect you quickly get used to that. So take, queen takes, knight c6, attacking d4, bishop e3, e5. The other move I was debating here was knight d7, again attacking d4, and then after rook d1, like now striking with e5. But I think the game continuation was fine. Yeah, so here, white could take if they want, and then play it like this. So move the queen back to e2. Then the computer gives an interesting line. Knight takes e4, knight takes e4, knight takes c4, queen takes c4, and now d5, forking the queen and the knight. Queen moves away somewhere, and then take here. I guess white could maybe take either pawn. If they take this pawn, I do gain some counterplay down the b file. I think the position's roughly equal. I could see why white might be a tad bit better here. If I take here, they're going to regain that pawn soon. So d5, and now I ventured knight d4. Maybe knight e7, though. It's just a better way of playing. The computer doesn't seem to think so. It approves of knight d4. But somehow I wasn't quite comfortable with the position I got. So here I played rook e8. Computer likes queen e7. Kind of a similar idea, or is it? So what happens if white tries to win the pawn this way? Because now I don't have knight takes e4 because they can take with the queen. With the rook on e8, that would be just losing the queen, but now it would be a trade and white would be up a piece. The queen e7 seems less intuitive to me. I guess it wants to play knight d7 now, opening the bishop and maybe attacking e4. It's kind of a positional pawn sacrifice, I guess. Knight h5 is another option. I thought on knight h5 I might have to reckon with f4. Because if the pawn is captured this way, then I lose a piece on d4 immediately. And if it's captured this way, white can play rook takes f4. And then after e takes f4, then bishop takes d4. And they have two minor pieces for the rook plus pawn. This should benefit white. So I guess it wants to do something like this where we try to pin this pawn on f4. Some of these lines are not so intuitive for me. So I played rook e8. And the idea of that is it's indirect defense of d4, because after bishop takes d4, e takes d4, queen takes d4, I would have knight takes e4 with the counterattack, and my knight is defended by the rook. I don't think white wants that transformation. So white played f3, and I was sort of criticizing that move a bit. Maybe it's not so bad. I thought f4 was a more resolute way of continuing, though. Because again, I have the same problem. I can't take on f4, and maybe white can play f5 and or even take on e5 at a convenient time, trying to gain an open f-file. f4 seems like a better try. Yeah, just my initial impression is that I should have played knight e7. And then the plan for black here would be knight d7 and push f5, very much in the style of a King's Indian. I don't have my light square bishop, but I think white is not so well placed for queenside assault. Compared to a King's Indian, usually in that line, white's pawn would be on c4 and they'd be ready to advance c5. But here, they're kind of clogged down the c-file, so I think they're a bit behind where they want to be. So if we take like the computer's line, a5, knight d7, queen e2, yeah, f5. This just seems to be pretty easy play for black. f3, knight f6, come back and pressure the center. Maybe I can send my knight to h5. Maybe I can play f4 and g5 and pawn storm. h5, eventually prepare g4. That's what I'd be looking to do. And for the moment, I don't see like a good way for white to break through. Maybe b4, b5, and try to use the fact that I have a pawn on a6 to offer a trade and open the position. I think I would have rather done that in retrospect. So back to the game as played. Yeah, so here I tried to rescue my knight on d4, because again, I'm worried that if I play some sort of neutral move, like, I don't know, like knight d7, let's say, that they're going to do this. Unusual retreat, but the point of that is to prepare c3 and embarrass my knight. It has no safe squares to retreat to. So this would be cause for alarm. So I tried to prepare some possible retreat squares by playing c6, looking to knock out d5. And now queen d2. The computer says take. If take, I probably would have taken with the b pawn. And again, they still can't take that pawn, remember, because we always have knight takes e4 at the bare minimum. So take I would have taken with the b pawn. This seems fine. And I think now that I've knocked out that d5 pawn, I'm never in danger of outright losing the knight, because it can go back to e6 now. So I feel like black has good play. I think this knight is worth something in the center. So my opponent played queen d2. And, oh, he's actually making a couple moves. Yeah, he's pointing out a5. He says in the chat, maybe this would have been better. Yeah, possibly. It stops the b5 idea. So that could be a move. And if I take here, the plan would be to take with the knight. And try to get a position like this. This would be excellent for white. And they can try to play c3 and kick my knight out. So yeah, a5 could be a good option. Computer's top move. And the engine wants me to wait, play something like queen c7, maybe rook c8 comes to mind too. So queen d2, I played b5, and I think this pawn action favors black because I'm destabilizing d5 by playing this way. Bishop back to a2, b4. And this surprised me a little bit. I thought white would play knight e2 and look to swap. Although I wasn't all that opposed to a swap.
Check.
Just doing this and then taking on d5 was one option. Or maybe even playing c5. Although if I play c5, I have to be concerned about a similar issue as before. White moving their knight away and trying to prepare c3. And my knight again has no squares. It can't go back anywhere. I guess trading
Check.
and then playing c takes d5 is acceptable, though. This is similar to the game, except that we've exchanged a pair of knights. So knight d1, I took, pawn takes. Thought there was a chance that white would play c3, but I always saw that I had b3 against that if they did that, counterattacking the bishop. And then there's cool lines like take here, and we've got all this pawn tension in the center, but I think it's going to open up in black's favor should white keep chopping. Yeah, I very much like black here. They're always going to have to take a timeout to win that pawn, and it just looks good for me. Maybe e4 could come soon. Open the bishop. Yeah, and here's where it started getting hairy. I felt like I had a good position. I mean, I've freed up some squares for my knight, or one square for my knight. Now I can go to f5. I feel like this bishop is still poorly placed. b3 was a serious temptation. I just couldn't figure out what to do in the event of bishop takes. I could double up their pawns, but are these pawns really weak enough to justify having given up a pawn? I did look at queen b8. That was one line I considered. I think I looked at a line like this, trying to go after this pawn, and then I saw that they could defend it with knight c3, and I kind of gave up on the line. The computer wants to play e4 and try to break through. Yeah, that e4 move is critical because if white takes, my knight can jump in, and it also unleashes the bishop on this diagonal. I don't know, though. Maybe white can keep it closed. Computer seems to think that I have some compensation here. Hard to say, though. So I played knight f5 and sacrificed the b4 pawn. Queen a5, that's not a move I considered. That would defend here. Also adds an attacker to d5. And if take and take, queen takes, knight e4. Still dangerous for white to take this, apparently. If queen d3, I would assume, I was thinking queen
Check.
c5 check, but even stronger to play knight to g3. Ah, okay. Because rook e1 is not possible due to my rook covering that square. If rook f2, I was thinking check. But I can't go here because they take here. Knight h5, and this is a threat. You know, white's pieces are uncoordinated. This knight is pinned. There's a clear threat on the horizon with bishop e5. Yeah, queen a5 looks pretty good. Not really concerning ourselves with the fact that white can take on d4. I was trying to avoid bishop takes d4 with the knight f5 move, but maybe I shouldn't have been concerned about that. So here... Oh, and they played bishop back to f2. They didn't grab on b4 directly. Okay. And here I played bishop h6. All but forcing white to grab on the b4. The computer doesn't like that. It says rook c8 would be better, attacking c2. And then what if something like this? a5 and just defend that pawn. So maybe I played a little fast and loose with the b4 pawn. It's possible. As I said, when you're approaching a time scramble, your natural inclination is to try to seize the initiative and go on the attack, and that's what I was doing with bishop h6. I'm kind of like saying, all right, I know you're going to win b4, just get it over with already, deflect your queen away from guarding your king so I can start attacking with a move like this. Even this seems pretty promising. Rook b8 also decent. Bishop b6 was good, apparently. Queen d7. Yeah, it's getting complicated. We need more time to properly play a position like this. So I just got out of the attack. I didn't put the queen on e7 because I didn't want to encourage rook e1 pinning me. So queen d7, knight c3. Here I dove in with knight g3. This is a good move, rook eb8, really. Counterintuitive move. Once again, because why not use the a-rook? Would be my natural question. Rook ab8 is not as strong for some reason. Rook eb8. Okay, let's just see the threat. I assume it's bishop e3 check. So if take, yeah,
Check.
bishop e3 check. And the bishop cannot take because of this. It's hard to see. It's hard to connect that pin that I could put the bishop under to this diagonal. And I always assumed that if I attacked the bishop, they were just going to play a5 and guard this bishop more reliably with the pawn.
Check.
But apparently here, still, if king h1, there's knight g3. So what if here? Queen e7, maybe trying to come here. and black is doing well on the complications. Like I said, those are resources that would require more time, more than likely, to fully appreciate. And even then, it'd be tough. So I focused on the side of the board where I felt I was better, so I played knight g3, rook e1. Yeah, one point of knight g3 is that if rook f2, I have e3, and this rook doesn't have a safe square. All these squares are covered. Yeah, best would be rook e2, just giving up the exchange. Interestingly, the engine proposes f takes e4, just giving up the rook on f1 and trying to play this position. Just a practical way to attempt to resist for white. So rook e1, e takes f3, and now queen h4. I actually did see queen h4. I can't recall if I mentioned it, but I did see that that move was possible when I took on f3. My original intention was just to put something on h5. Yeah, and it looks like this is the best way to do it. Because that's one of the few ways I can simultaneously defend all three of those unprotected pieces. Now the knights are protecting each other, and the queen is blocked from taking the bishop. I guess I could take here, but
Check.
take, bishop d2. Again, very complicated. So attacking this. What happens if the rook moves? Let's just say, let's say even rook e7. Queen f5, and I'm becoming active. Also, there's the threat of bishop g5. Okay, so maybe that's not the best. What if rook d1? Take, and now queen f5. And again, I'm attacking stuff. Whoops.
Check.
Yeah, he keeps going back. I don't know if he knows I'm doing a video right now. And just wanted to look at lines in a certain order. Oh, he's saying something to me. I'm just gonna. He said, "Sorry, forgot I was moving on your board."
Check.
Yeah, I thought he might be okay after this, but it does seem like black has some nice resources, especially connected with queen f5, attacking these two pawns. I'm not sure I would trade on e1 first. I mean, my natural inclination would be to play queen f5 directly and not cede the file. But apparently taking is much stronger. Trade
Check.
first and then play queen f5. That's weird. There are a couple weird things with the rooks that the computer is suggesting in this game that are not natural at first blush. But I played knight e2, just a complete
Check.
blackout of a move. Yeah, I completely forgot that this was possible, as I've already said multiple times now. I thought the game would have to go like this, and then take, and then white wouldn't have time to grab one of my pieces because of e1 queen, protected by the rook. And I thought I would be up in exchange. I thought white would play something like this, and then I would have time to play like bishop to g7, and I'd be up in exchange. But clearly that was not the case. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. It was my fault.
Check.
So yeah, after knight e2 takes, I should just be losing. I'm down a piece. I managed to create a few problems. I think he played pretty well, but the clock is the dominant factor now. He tried to get his light square bishop back in the game.
Check.
I think there were a couple moments where he could have consolidated much easier. Like taking on g2, for instance, right now would be pretty easy, I think. Take, and then he's guarding c2 and overprotecting d5, and the queen also guards h3. Gets rid of a pesky pawn around his king. Yeah, I think this is pretty safe for him. This is a lie, don't believe it. Queen c8, 0.00. That's the computer needing time to process what's going on.
Check.
But he traded and then played bishop takes a6. And I mean, I want a messy position when I'm losing this much and we have less than a minute on our clock. I'll take any mess I can get. He took on g2. Of course, I cannot trade queens. So I just played queen b3, attacking the bishop. Still trying to keep pieces on the board, just attacking loose pieces. Here I played this to guard against queen f6. Here he's threatening queen takes f7 mate, so I got to do something about that. yeah, we're both missing multiple things. And as soon as he put the bishop on c3, I saw that he was vulnerable for bishop to e3, and fortunately I got that. We both had 8 seconds left, and now it's a total crapshoot. Funny
Check.
to replay these moves.
Check. 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 Check.
Yeah, so not the ideal end to this game. I thought it was interesting otherwise, the play leading up to the mad time scramble and me dropping a piece. And I like this line a lot, this modern, so I'm going to keep playing it and mix it into my play a bit more. And I encourage you guys also to play lines that you're maybe less comfortable with and maybe not fully ready to play like in a over-the-board serious game, but just play them in your online games and study them a bit and use it as a training vessel, a way to broaden your chess horizons. So hope you guys enjoyed this game, and I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.